And I think they are finally decided that, mass war and mass killing and all that really doesn't work. Back when the population was a whole lot smaller, it would. But now, Saddam Hussein kills off all the Kurds. Okay, percentage-wise, what has that done to the world population? Very little. I mean, it's a disaster. But if you're talking about killing off the population, you haven't even got up to 1/10 of 1%. And so I think that it's going to come in a more subtle way. I think we're going to go out with a whimper, not a bang.
Fantastic. Okay, the next topic is called timing. And I'll pass you over to Sandra.
Hi, Lyn. It's Sandra again.
Yeah.
We had some questions from Meadow about and Satan free will. You've answered basically everything free will, but one question that we're still curious about, when you look at something, is it fixed in time or is it changeable?
From what we have found, it is very changeable unless it is one of those rocks in the pond of time. And so we do have free will. And it is very changeable and can have lasting effects. For instance, this is sort of a oversimplified explanation, but if I remote view myself tomorrow morning or tomorrow at noon, and I find that tomorrow at noon I'm lying in the morgue dead because tomorrow morning I am in a car wreck. Well, I'm not getting in the car. I'm not leaving the house in the morning. I am going to change that. Now, we have found that there is a thing called the self-fulfilling prophecy, but there's also a thing called paradoxical tasking. If the police come to me and they say, where will the criminal be at 9 o'clock tonight? I do my session and I say, oh, he's going to be in Joe's Bar and Grill eating dinner. Okay. At 8:30, they put police in the bushes around Joe's Bar and Grill. At 8:40, the criminal walks up. They jump out of the bushes and arrest him, and at 9 o'clock, he's in jail. They're happy because they caught the criminal. Anybody who was a victim of the criminal is happy because he's been caught. However, my subconscious mind has just been made to be wrong. And therefore, somebody acting on my prediction changed it. Now, if I had said that at 9 o'clock the criminal will be in jail, they never would have gone out to Joe's Bar and Grill, and at 9 o'clock he'd be sitting there eating dinner. And so this is called paradoxical tasking. The fact is that you can change the future. And if somebody does that to you, like if the police did that to me, my subconscious might be very upset with the police. However, if I do it to myself to make my life better or to save my life even, then it's a rewarding thing. And so can you change the future? Absolutely you can. And we have found that to be true. Should you change the future? Well, there again, you're back to ethics, I'm afraid. Did that answer the question?
I think you did an excellent job of answering the question. We also have another question from another member named 4G. And the question here is, Lyn, you've mentioned you have RV'd the past, the future, and time sideways. Can you explain further your view of time? Is there any way to discern whether you're viewing our timeline versus alternate timelines?
I'm not sure there are alternate timelines. I think we're all sort of stuck in the same timeline. However, time does not seem to be the fourth dimension. It seems to be a set of three dimensions, sideways, up and down, X, Y, and Z. coordinates, and there does seem to be a way to go different directions in time. One of the scientific things that has been found, by the way, is that when we accurately predict the future, they have done, the MRI scans and all that, you're using the same part of your brain as in remembering the past. And so in remote viewing, controlled remote viewing at least, it's a very real thing that you're actually remembering the future, not predicting it. Now, what implications that has to the remote viewing process, we're still working on. But anyway, the view of time, the scientific view of time is basically that time goes in one direction at a set speed. They have found by sending astronauts around the world, of course, that time is a relative thing. You set two accurate chronometers equally at the beginning of a space flight. You send one on the thing going around the world and another one on the ground, and when they get back, they will read different times because speed through space does affect the rate of time. And so the rate of time is not constant. We have seemed to find that the direction of time, you can go backwards in time. You can, the analogy is you throw a rock on the pond and waves come backward toward you as well as go forward. And many of the things that we sense from the future, we sort of experience now or remember. And the fact is that things can come back through time. We did a 4-year study to show that even though we don't think that you can change the past, there are ways that you can influence the past. And you can go do a remote viewing session, target your own self in the past, and influence your decision-making process to where you make the right decisions all the time. And now to do that, you have to log in your decision, every decision you make, and you wait until you know the feedback, and then pump the hindsight back into that decision-making process. And what happens is your rate of decision-making accuracy becomes not just higher, but much, much higher, by 40 or 50% higher. So if you make the right decisions 50% of the time by doing this and influencing your own self in the past, you can actually raise your accuracy rate to making 85 to 90% good decisions. Anyway, the view of time that remote viewers get is that time goes in different directions, and it is three-dimensional, and that it doesn't go at a specific set rate, that you can vary the rate of time. Anyway, when a viewer begins to understand time, that's one of the big milestones we look for in a viewer's progress and their growth. Is there any way to discern whether you're viewing our timeline versus an alternate one? Not that I know of. We're still working on this. We're still doing research. We're still learning a lot of, like I said at the very beginning of this, we're in kindergarten here. We've still got a long way to learn. This is a science, and we're actually in on the very ground floor of it. So right now, as far as I know, there's no way to tell whether you're viewing our timeline or an alternate one, if there is an alternate one.
Thank you, Lyn. You did answer the question. Now, I do have one little bit for clarification. When you were talking about that when you're the influencing of the past, that you can't really change the past, but you can do it on an individual level, what I'm taking from it is that you can influence a small segment of it, but not a real large area to where the general trend stays the same, but there would be some individual differences?
Well, the reason we don't know if you can change the past or not is because if I go back and change the past, then it will become the past, the new past, but it will also be my old past, and so I will never know that there was any need to go back and change it. And so basically, sort of here would be the alternate timeline. And so it's that old question of, if you go back and kill your grandfather, then do you stop existing? And if you stop existing, then nobody ever goes back to kill your grandfather, and therefore you exist. You know, it's one of those paradoxes that really doesn't have a decent answer. And like I say, we're still studying this. We don't know of any way to even tell whether you can change the past or not. But on the influence in the past, you can definitely, it's not just an individual thing. We have found that if you can influence a leader, you have just influenced everyone that he leads. And so the information on the remote influencing does have a lot of implications that can be very powerful, whether used well or used badly. Did I even address?
Thank you, Lyn. I think you definitely answered the question.
Okay.
Yes.
We're talking with CRV remote viewer Lyn Buchanan. Lyn's websites are lynbuchanan.com and www.crviewer.com. The next section is consciousness, and it's over to Plain.
Yes, Lyn. Your boss in the military made you work on many targets that involved death, and you found 4 locations that people or souls went to after death. Those were along the lines of heaven, hell, oblivion, and reincarnation. Could you describe this experience and go over the case where someone reincarnated into the past?
Okay, well, let me do a little correction. The boss you speak of was not my boss. It was Ed Dames. Ed Dames realized that I would not view death, that this was one of my very, very weak points. I would just shy away from it. And so he started giving me targets of people who were in the process of dying and, would be in a car wreck or something. And then he would move me, time-wise, he would move me like 4 minutes into the future to a point after their death and have me describe that person then. He did with this with a great number of targets, to the point where I no longer feared viewing death, and I could view that and work on those lines for the military from that point on. Basically, what I found in those sessions was that some of the people would go to a place that I would call heaven. It was wonderful when I accessed them a few minutes later. Other people would go to a place that I would call hell. I would access them a few minutes, move forward in time, access them a few minutes later, and be immediately thrown out of the session, and would even have nightmares for the following month. I mean, it was just whatever that is. I don't want to go there.